Hey YouTube, wanted to do kind of a quick review slash my opinion type video on a good musical setup. So I kind of went through kind of a, I don't want to say a hobby, but had a small stint in the head hi-fi space, basically looking for like a nice amp deck combo to kind of enhance your music listening experience through obviously a computer or whatever else you want to connect to it. And I've been through over the course of maybe the last few years a variety of amps and decks, and particularly I'm a big fan of Schiit. I know it's kind of a funny name, but that's the name is Schiit, Schiit, of their products. You know, not sure why, but I think a lot is how they design their products. They kind of have a very nice, a little dusty in here, nice industrial type of a look, and American made. So I don't know, just kind of appealed to me. They have a nice variety of offerings from amps to decks to a few other things. So I've kind of I had the most experience in their line of products. I've tried a lot of their kind of entry level stuff, if you want to call it, the $100, $200, up to maybe $300 or $400 range stuff. And I've played with them, tried them. I've sold, bought, resold, traded, and ultimately, what I landed on is this one being my favorite, and this is the Valhalla 2. Now, big reason for that is I just really like the tubes, um, even though technically that if you're a kind of a spec nerd and a true audiophile, tubes don't give you probably as good of a sound as a solid state type of an amp. But for me, what I like about it is that it gives you a lot of flexibility to kind of play with the sound. You can switch these tubes around, especially these two front ones, and kind of, in a way, adjust the sound of your music. So in a way, you kind of can modify and tweak it. And as I've said before, I'm a tinkerer. I like to modify my products, tweak them, and see how I can make them sound better. So even though it took me a while to get this one because it is a little pricey, and I usually try to buy everything used just to save some money. They don't come up on the market a whole lot, as much as some of the other ones. Now, to give a little background, I've tried the Magni 2, the Magni 3, the new uh, what do you call it? Slipping my mind now. The is it Lyre, the Lyre 2 and the 3. I've tried. I've owned, and I say try. I've owned them for a short period of time. I'm trying to think of other ones I've tried. The Magni Hershey was the most recent one I just got rid of, which I liked a lot, by the way. I just didn't need to whole lot of amps. Um, but I pretty much tried their whole kind of entry level line. The Valley 2, which I liked a lot too. The Valley 2 is a hybrid amp similar to this one right here, where you kind of get um, a little tube um, on top so you can kind of tweak the sound. Now, these are hybrid, so these are kind of, you know, just the name sounds, they're a cross between a solid state amp and a full tube amp. This is a full tube amp. But this one I got more of an impulse buy. It was pretty cheap on drop. I think it was like 60 bucks. And I like to have two amps just to sometimes do a little A and B comparison between music to see kind of how different things sound. But really been happy with this one. Out of all the ones I've tried, like I said, this is the one that I've decided I like the most in terms of the sound. It particularly the two, because even though I've tried the Valley 2, the Lear 2, the Lear 3, these are all like the hybrid type tube setups. Quite frankly, I don't know, I didn't hear the tube sound, if that makes sense. To me, they sounded very much more like their solid state counterparts. I've tried different tubes and tube rolling, that whole aspect, but I can never really hear the tube sound, like that kind of warmer type of sound that tubes are supposed to give you. So I played around with a lot of the hybrid type amps for a while, and finally bit the bullet and got a full blown tube. And actually, prior to this one, I also got the Dark Voice, which is another very popular tube amp. And that one, actually, I loved how it sounded. Dark Voice is really a good name for it. But what I didn't like about the Dark Voice was, one, it didn't fit my setup because it was kind of long that way, and it was just didn't fit here. And it was a kind of a Chinese cheaper type amp, and I read reviews or comments about it catching on fire, and I just didn't want that hassle, so I gave it to my brother. So Michael, if you're watching this, hope you don't burn your place down. So I got this one, and I've actually owned this one probably the longest of all my amps now, because like I said, I try them within a few weeks or so. I kind of will flip them or trade them or sell them, buy another one, just to kind of keep trying new things. And this one I've had probably for about, I don't know, 3, 4 months now, and I really have no more intention of looking. I think I landed on the perfect sound. I've ordered some new tubes for it, so I've kind of experimented um, with different setups. So yeah, this is the one I landed on. I like it. And as far as a deck goes, I've also tried a variety of decks too. And quite frankly, I don't know. I don't really notice much of a sound difference with the decks. Again, I'm not an audiophile, so maybe my ears aren't as finely tuned as some other folks. But where I did notice a difference with some of the Schiit gear is years ago I tried their kind of upper end, kind of higher end decks, the Biofrost, and it had what they call a Gen 5 USB, which is basically it has, I don't know the medical the technical jargon, but basically it had um, some isolation built into the USB that reduced some of the noise that you get from your computer when you connect it. And I did, that was probably the only deck where I noticed like an improvement in sound. But it was very pricey. I think I paid like $500 for it. And I'm not into music enough to justify keeping it. So eventually, once I've had my trial run, I did get rid of it. And I went back to using the Madi multi-bit, which again, the whole multi-bit thing, again, I couldn't really hear a difference. So again, maybe it's just my ears, but Schiit launched the Modius deck earlier this year, and what appealed to me about it was it has even though now they're Unison USB, which is their next um, generation of the USB, which with sound isolation, and at $200. So a great deal considering the Bifrost they usually sell for like 600, 700. So at $200, and it was a larger form factor, so it kind of fit that. It was a no-brainer. So I landed on the Modius, and I haven't looked back. I think for $200, cheaper if you can find them used. I don't think you can find a better deck than that. This one, there isn't a whole lot to say about it. Like I said, I just got it because it was cheap, and like I said, I like the tube aspect, so just something to experiment with. It takes actually I can't remember what the actual tube size is, but these are the 60, the EC 6388, I believe it is. They go by a variety of different names, but these are the more common. This is actually different, so I just wanted to hear different tubes to see if I'll notice a difference. Um, but that's kind of it for a sound setup. So if you're looking for like a, a value-oriented type of a sound setup, the deck, you can't go wrong with this deck for $200. I can't think of a better deal. Amps obviously are subjective, depends what you want. I would say if you want a tube amp, this one is phenomenal. If you don't want to hassle with tubes, I think a good one to consider would be the Magni 3 um, or the Magni Hersey. Those are for $100. They're really good bargains, especially the Hersey. It's, I think, dollar for dollar, probably the best amp you can buy. So if you don't want to mess around with um, tube amps, you can take a look at those. And then the other component to good sound is headphones. And that one actually, unfortunately, I kind of took for granted, and I waited till the end to finally invest in a good pair of headphones. And instantly, you see a big difference. So these are the Sennheiser 6XX, which are kind of mass drop remake of the 650s. So from all my research, these are basically the 650s, just rebranded as a 6XX. I actually used to own the 650s. Now I never had them side by side, so I can't really comment if they sound identical, because I probably went a few months in between when I got rid of my 650s and I got these. But I've always read that when you pair like the 600 or the 650s with a true kind of OTL type of amp, it's just magic. And I couldn't agree more. I was blown away even though I had the 650 headphones, I never had a true tube amp. And then I ended up getting rid of the 650s because, again, I don't know, I didn't really see much of a sound improvement, and I was using a lot of that kind of hybrid type amps. And then I got the tube amp. I didn't have good headphones, so then when I finally got the two together, it was, you know, it's a awesome pairing. I highly recommend it. So from, like I said, I'm not an audiophile, so I'm not gonna try to convince someone that's, a audiophile about the best sound, because my ears can't really distinguish the difference. But if you're just like an everyday, everyday dude and you just want a good sound setup on your desk, I think this is probably the best three pairing is the Valhalla 2, the Modius, and the 6XXs. Um, you're probably going to spend, obviously, if you buy new, you're going to spend some money on it, but I would try buying used. You can find all the stuff on eBay and Headfi, which is a pretty common audio forum, or Reddit audio exchange. You can probably pick up a lot of this stuff used. Give you an idea, I bought this one new just because it was just released. The deck, it just came out, so there wasn't much of a used market for it. So, and I figured they were pretty popular in demand. There's a lot of like wanted to buy ads. I figured even if a used one popped up, it probably wouldn't be at a very um, like significant reduction, maybe save 20, $30. So I just didn't want to wait and bought that new. This was, like I said, these are 200. The headphones, the same thing. I just bought new. Um, they kind of hold their value pretty well. So if you go on eBay, you'll maybe save 20, $30. But I figured, nah, I'll just get new, have a peace of mind. And plus, I don't know, I don't want like someone sweat, in these things anyway. So I got that new. Uh, this Valhalla 2, it retails for $350. I actually found a pretty good bargain in the used market. I got it for 200. So I was really happy with that. So basically 200, 400, 600. So about $600 roughly is what I invested in the sound setup. And, it'll last an extremely long time. The other, I think, positive aspect about the tube amps is that these are replaceable. So eventually, they have a lifespan. Hours vary for each kind of tube. But the point is, you can just replace these, where a solid state amp, they have solid state capacitors soldered into the motherboard. Now, should obviously you could replace those too if you know how, but not as easy as this. Granted, those solid state can probably go longer, but just kind of an added bonus knowing that should these burn out, you can just replace them, and they literally just pull out, pop in, very easy. Mine, if you notice, kind of stick out a lot because I have socket savers on there, because I like to do some tube rolling, tube changing, just to preserve the socket base that's soldered to the circuit board from wearing out or being damaged. You put a little kind of connector on top, so that one kind of takes most of the abuse from being put in, put out. And I did that for both of them, and it also makes them a little higher, so you can get a better grip on them, because when they're stock, they're kind of buried in there, very hard to get out. And I kind of like how it looks. So once these get heated up, they have a nice glow to them. Actually, I probably should have turned it on ahead of time for this review so you guys could see them. So I just turned it on now. But yeah, I think they have a cool, nice little glow about them, so it looks really nice in the dark. And it keeps it cooler, because this thing gets hot. So by keeping the tubes a little bit exposed, it kind of helps, I think, reduce some of the heat inside. So yeah, that is my sound setup. And of course, your sound's going to be as good as your weakest link, as they say. So you got to make sure that your source files are good. You want to get high bitrate FLACs, and then basically everything from your computer to your ears, you want high quality. So make sure you get some decent cabling, for all the connections. Don't buy like cheap, 99-cent stuff. Spend a few dollars, get some good cables, good headphones, and really the whole chain has to be, good. And you'll notice, like I said, once you go this way, it's hard to go back. So I used to always listen to music in some kind of cheapo headphones, and I thought it was fine. But then when you step it up to that, and then you step down, you notice a big difference. Then you really see kind of what hi-fi music sounds like. I never really thought I guess I always thought it was fine, but until you try it, you probably won't know what you're missing. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to cover. So like I said, this is kind of just a quick overview of my sound setup. I'm not an expert on this, so take what I have to say with a grain of salt. Do your own research. But I would invite you to really look at Schiit's line. Like I said, this is by no means a paid endorsement. My channel isn't big enough for that, but I just always like their gear that's priced well, and there's a lot you can choose from, so it makes mixing and matching very easy. Although I am very, one thing I am very disappointed in, so Schiit offers basically two colors. They're kind of stainless steel silver, and they kind of have a few black options. And I got the silver, but unfortunately, it looks like they changed their formula or whatever you want to call it. But this silver, I don't know if you can tell in the video, is not the same color as this. They don't match at all. This has more of like a pewter hue to it. It has like almost like a yellowish um, tint to it. And this is obviously very much like you would expect a stainless steel kind of look. This kind of has, I don't know if you can pick it up in the camera, you kind of can, and it's not like light or anything. This is the actual color. It has that kind of a yellowish kind of tint to it, like a brown, like a pewter gold type of hue to it, which is kind of annoying that they did that, because now you're just completely messing up people's look here. I guess I don't know. I mean, don't know why they would do that when people have already invested in this look and they're buying this color to match that. Otherwise, I would, if I'd known it was this color, I would have gone just a black one, because then these black would have matched the shelf. And eventually, if I ever change this out or whatever, and actually I think they make this in black too. I could always look to get it down the road, but yeah, pretty annoyed that they made this in this weird off silver color that doesn't match any other gear. So that would be my only con, is that. But you can kind of see how, let me see if I change the light. You can kind of see now kind of the glow there. Let me try to zoom in here. But yeah, so that's kind of how it looks once they kind of get heat up. And when it's dark, it kind of has a nice little amber glow to them, which kind of adds to the, I think, ambiance of listening to music. Because get the lights off, that nice subtle glow. It just makes kind of the music experience, I think, a little bit more enjoyable. But yeah, so this is my setup. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thanks for watching.